Philippine Senator Ronald Bato Dela Rosa defies an ICC arrest warrant, sparking a dramatic standoff outside the Senate. Gunfire erupts, supporters rally, and the Supreme Court denies his plea to block enforcement. The nation watches as sovereignty, justice, and political power collide in a high-stakes, unprecedented crisis. Tensions erupted in the Philippine capital as Senator Ronald Bato Dela Rosa, a former national police chief and prominent figure during the Duterte administration's anti-drug campaign, became the focal point of a standoff that has gripped the nation. Dela Rosa is currently wanted by the International Criminal Court under a warrant accusing him of alleged crimes against humanity linked to the anti-drug operations he oversaw. The developments have ignited a fierce debate about national sovereignty, legal accountability, and the reach of international courts in Philippine affairs. On the streets of Manila, and particularly outside the Philippine Senate, supporters of Dela Rosa and former President Rodrigo Duterte what they view as an overreach by foreign authorities. Demonstrators waved banners and chanted slogans demanding that the senator be allowed to remain under Philippine jurisdiction. Anti-riot police stood guard to prevent clashes, their presence adding a tense undertone to the protest. The crowds, though passionate, were largely peaceful, with the main objective being a demonstration of solidarity and resistance to what many perceive as a violation of national sovereignty. Dela Rosa himself addressed the media multiple times, expressing both defiance and emotion. In one statement, he questioned the legitimacy of the ICC's authority over him. Why? How about you? Would you surrender to the ICC? How about you? Would you surrender to them if you're a Filipino? We have existing Philippine courts. Why should we be taken away by these foreigners? This is an attack to our sovereignty, he said. The words resonated with many Filipinos who remain wary of external interference in domestic legal matters and have long supported a view that matters of justice should be resolved within the country's own judicial system. Despite his firm stance, Dela Rosa also spoke candidly about the personal and emotional toll of the situation in a press conference. His voice carrying both conviction and vulnerability. He said, "I serve this country faithfully, and this is what's happening to me. So if it's the fate given by God, so I'm going to accept it." Those words reflected a recognition of the gravity of the charges he faces, yet also a determination to maintain his perspective as a public servant who believes he acted within the bounds of his duties. The senator's comments on his role in the anti-drug campaign sought to clarify his intentions and defend his actions against allegations of misconduct. "My role was to lead the war on drugs. Having a war on drugs doesn't automatically mean we want to kill all people. Of course, if the lives of the policemen are at risk, they should be able to defend themselves. I didn't ignore any abusive act. If there were any, we investigated them," he explained. These statements were intended to illustrate that while the campaign was aggressive and controversial, it was not indiscriminate and that procedure. Mechanisms existed to investigate potential abuses. The situation escalated when gunfire was reported inside the Philippine Senate, an event that shocked the nation. Journalists caught the unfolding drama as they ducked for cover and sought safety while reporting on the incident. Soldiers quickly entered the Senate to secure the premises, and police officers coordinated with the media to manage the chaos. The incident underscored the tension between law enforcement objectives and the unpredictable reactions of political actors and their supporters. Although investigations later indicated that the gunfire resulted from internal confusion rather than a targeted offensive, the event highlighted the volatility of the standoff and the high stakes involved in the enforcement of the ICC warrant. While Dela Rosa remained within the Senate, protected by allies, legal efforts were underway to contest the enforcement of the international warrant. His legal team filed petitions with the Philippines. New Supreme Court seeking to block any attempts at arrest and questioning the applicability of ICC jurisdiction following the country's withdrawal from the Rome Statute. Their arguments centered on constitutional protections, sovereignty, and procedural concerns, asserting that local courts should handle any matters related to allegations of wrongdoing. Despite these efforts, the Supreme Court declined to grant temporary restraining orders, removing a key obstacle to the execution of the ICC warrant and signaling that the legal avenues for evading arrest were limited. Following the Supreme Court's decision, the government reaffirmed its commitment to enforcing the ICC's order. Officials emphasized that the warrant was legally binding and that any obstruction could result in legal consequences for those aiding or harboring the senator. The enforcement agencies, including the National Bureau of Investigation, were directed to pursue the matter vigorously, reflecting the administration's insistence on upholding both domestic law and international obligations. The political implications of Dela Rosa's standoff are profound. His supporters, many of whom remain loyal to the political legacy of Duterte, view the ICC's involvement as a direct challenge to Philippine sovereignty. Meanwhile, critics argue that the senator's attempts to avoid arrest represent a failure of accountability for a campaign that resulted in thousands of deaths and left a lasting impact on communities across the country. The incident has become a flashpoint in broader discussions about the Philippines' engagement with international law, the limits of executive and legislative power, and the role of public opinion in shaping political outcomes. The streets surrounding the Senate became a stage for both protest and demonstration, with supporters and security personnel navigating a delicate balance. Demonstrators chanted, waved flags, and occasionally engaged in tense verbal exchanges with law enforcement. NT officers, security forces maintained a controlled presence, ensuring that the protests did not devolve into violence, yet the atmosphere was undeniably charged. Observers noted that the combination of political symbolism, legal conflict, and public spectacle contributed to a heightened sense of urgency and unpredictability in the Capitol. Within the Senate, the events unfolded with an air of drama. Dela Rosa and his supporters had taken measures to secure their position, yet the sound of gunfire and the arrival of armed personnel emphasized the seriousness of the situation. Journalists documented the standoff, capturing images of personnel taking cover and tracking shots of officials moving through corridors as tensions escalated. Soldiers, police, and investigative personnel coordinated their actions under high-pressure conditions, demonstrating both the complexity and fragility of maintaining order in a politically charged environment. Dela Rosa's eventual disappearance from the Senate added another layer of intrigue and concern. His departure, executed without public explanation, fueled speculation about the methods and motivations behind the maneuver. Critics labeled it a calculated evasion of justice, while supporters framed it as a protective measure against what they perceive as politically motivated targeting. The senator's absence from the public eye intensified debates regarding the enforcement of the ICC warrant and the capacity of local authorities to uphold international obligations. Public sentiment across the Philippines reflected the nation's divisions. Families affected by the anti-drug campaign expressed support for international investigation and potential accountability, hoping that Dela Rosa's compliance with the ICC could bring closure. At the same time, communities and groups aligned with law enforcement praised his service and questioned the legitimacy of the ICC's involvement, emphasizing domestic legal mechanisms as the appropriate venue for resolution. The interplay between these perspectives underscored the complexity of public opinion and the delicate task of balancing justice, sovereignty, and political stability. The legal, political, and social dimensions of the standoff remain intertwined. So while the Supreme Court has ruled against temporary restraining measures, further judicial review is ongoing, leaving open questions about constitutional interpretation and the applicability of international statutes. Government agencies continue to plan enforcement operations, though political considerations and public sentiment influence the strategies employed. At the same time, Dela Rosa's public statements continue to resonate, offering insight into his worldview, rationale, and perception of responsibility. Throughout the standoff, Dela Rosa has projected a mixture of defiance, determination, and acknowledgement of personal consequence. His repeated insistence on the sovereignty of Philippine courts, combined with appeal
to fate and personal responsibility, has framed the narrative for both supporters and detractors.
Whether viewed as a defense of national dignity or a calculated maneuver to avoid accountability, his words have shaped the discourse around the crisis and defined the tone of media coverage, public discussion, and political analysis. The implications of these events extend beyond individual personalities and immediate legal concerns. They highlight enduring tensions between domestic governance and international legal frameworks, the challenges of enforcing justice in politically charged environments, and the complex relationship between political loyalty, public perception, and institutional authority. As the Philippines navigates this multifaceted crisis, observers note that outcomes will likely influence future engagement with international institutions, the conduct of law enforcement, and the broader political landscape. In the immediate term, the country remains on alert. Security fifth. Forces, law enforcement personnel, and government officials are closely monitoring developments, coordinating efforts, and preparing for potential escalations. Political analysts emphasize that the standoff's resolution, whether through legal compliance, negotiation, or continued evasion, will carry symbolic weight far beyond the individual case, shaping perceptions of accountability and the effectiveness of governance in the Philippines. Communities across the archipelago are watching closely, with citizens expressing opinions through protests, media commentary, and social networks. The standoff has prompted broader reflection on issues of justice, fairness, and governance, highlighting enduring questions about the balance between individual rights, state authority, and international oversight. The crisis, while centered on one senator, embodies larger struggles inherent in democratic societies facing complex legal, political, and ethical dilemmas. Even as the immediate events unfold, the legacy of the anti-drug campaign remains a point of contention. Thousands of lives were affected during Dela Rosa's tenure as police chief, and the pursuit of justice, both domestically and internationally, continues to be a source of national debate. The ICC warrant, the public protests, the standoff inside the Senate, and the subsequent legal proceedings together form a complex tapestry that captures the intersection of law, politics, and public perception in a modern Philippine democracy. Observers note that the events surrounding Dela Rosa could serve as a precedent for future interactions between domestic political figures and international courts. Questions regarding enforcement mechanisms, legal jurisdiction, and the interplay between political power and judicial authority are likely to persist long after the immediate crisis resolves. For now, the nation watches, debates, and reacts, reflecting the multifaceted nature of accountability in a globalized era. Throughout the cry, Isis Dela Rosa's words continue to echo his insistence on the primacy of Philippine courts, his acknowledgement of personal responsibility, and his appeals to fate and divine providence frame both his defense and the public discourse surrounding his actions. They provide a lens through which citizens, lawmakers, and international observers interpret the unfolding events, illustrating the human dimension at the heart of a legal and political struggle. In the coming weeks, as the ICC and Philippine authorities navigate this complex situation, the outcome will likely influence the broader trajectory of governance, legal accountability, and international engagement in the Philippines. Dela Rosa's stance, the Supreme Court's rulings, the response of law enforcement, and public reaction collectively illustrate the challenges of balancing national sovereignty, individual rights, and global legal responsibilities. The situation remains dynamic, with consequences that may resonate for years to come. The Philippine experience during this period underscores the intricate relationship between law, politics, and society. The standoff around Senator Dela Rosa serves as a powerful reminder that decisions made within the halls of government and in courtrooms can have profound effects on citizens, institutions, and the broader national consciousness. In the midst of protests, legal proceedings, and political maneuvering, the nation grapples with fundamental questions about justice, responsibility, and the rule of law. As the narrative continues to unfold, the eyes of both local and international communities remain fixed on Manila. The standoff with Senator Dela Rosa has evolved from a legal challenge into a defining moment of national conversation about governance, accountability, and the interplay between domestic and international legal systems. The final resolution remains uncertain, but the events already demonstrate the enduring tensions and profound stakes involved in navigating the intersection of law, politics, and public trust in the Philippines.